And in this episode, we're going to take a look at more Trump distraction tactics. He's trying to distract our attention, people. And he's making authoritarian moves. Let's get into
tearing this
it.
country apart for personal greed and power. He has no idea what he's talking about. There is no emergency that warrants deployment of troops. He is insulting the people of Chicago by calling our home a hellhole. And anyone who takes his word at face value is insulting Chicagoans, too.
Pritzker also says he has reason to believe that the Trump administration has already begun staging the Texas National Guard for deployment to his state. Lulu Garcia-Navarro, Shermichael Singleton out front. So, Lulu, you can hear the intensity in his voice. And I just want to say, though, in terms of what he's saying, it is a new level of fury from Governor Pritzker. Right? He hasn't shied away from a fight. He hasn't shied away from this fight. He likes a fight. But this is different. What he was saying about Trump was different.
It is different. And I think Governor Pritzker feels like it's warranted. I mean, let's put this into the context of what has historically happened in this country. You normally do not have a president essentially saying that he's going to send in troops to a city of the same country, right? I mean, if you look at this, this is punishment and not policy. Policy for crime would be like, I'm going to give you more money. I'm going to surge the police. I'm going to do things to help you tackle crime. This is aimed squarely at states and governors he doesn't like. I read something in the FT the other day which said if this was happening in any other country, they would paint this as, basically a president targeting opposition members in cities that he doesn't control. I mean, it just isn't American. This isn't the way we do things here.
Yeah, sure, Mike, I think Lulu does have a fair point here, right? You would say if this were in another country targeting opposition, right? Targeting his opposition leaders, opposition locations, certainly if Putin were doing it. Because the reality of it is that if this were really about crime, why is Trump not doing it in any Republican-led cities or states?
Look, I would do it wherever the crime is concentrated. It's objectively true that there are pockets of the city of Chicago that do have high concentrations of crime. We can't deny that. Look, is this a long-term strategy? Absolutely not. But it is a temporary fix. The president using the bully pulpit to put a spotlight on crime in Chicago, I think makes sense. We're discussing it. The mayor of D.C. just signed an act today allowing local police to work indefinitely with federal law enforcement because what they have seen is a decrease to a number of 0 in terms of murders in the city of D.C. Why would that not be a good thing? In Labor Day, just passed, for example, 58 people were shot in Chicago. 8 of those people killed. The youngest, who is now in critical condition, is a teenager. So, Aaron, to me, you may not necessarily like what the president is doing, but how in the world could any sane person not agree that trying to make safer communities for people who live in some of those higher concentrated areas of crime is not something that should be a bipartisan effort?
So, Lulu, the D.C. mayor, to the point that Shermichael's just saying, Muriel Bowser, she's just issued an executive order that requires coordination with federal law enforcement to the maximum extent allowable by law, in the words of her order, without an expiration date. And she did just days ago admit that Trump's crackdown in D.C. was reducing crime. So what does it mean that she has essentially, it sounds like, said, well, they can stay as long as they want and work with them?
I think it means that she's probably not going to be reelected as mayor of D.C. because if the polling here shows that about 80% of D.C. residents think that this is an absolute overreach, and so this is not happening in consultation with the people who both the mayor and the president are supposed to represent. They do not like this. They see this as an infringement on the city itself, and they see this as an occupation and not as some sort of liberation from crime. Of course, nobody likes crime. Of course, murders are bad. But this is about something much deeper. How do you do this? Whose role is it to tackle it? And who has autonomy?
So, Shermichael, what do you make of the mayor?
Can I push back a little bit? I mean, who's saying this? 2 weeks ago, I was on air on Laura Coates' show, and we aired about a 4 or 5 minute package of one of our reporters talking to residents in D.C., for example, who live in some of those very dangerous areas. Mixed race people, young and old, older people saying, at my age, I have to go home before sundown because it is too dangerous. So maybe if you're talking to some milquetoast liberal who lives in Northeast D.C. or Northwest D.C. in a $2 million house,
Sure, Michael,
then maybe
you
they're
live
saying,
in Virginia,
it's great.
and I live in
maybe
Washington, D.C.
But let me tell you something. There are
You
a
live in
lot of people
Virginia,
who live in the
and I
poor
live in
areas who
Washington,
do not
D.C.
see it the way that Lulu just described. And again, I'm not saying, Aaron, that this is a long-term fix. I acknowledge the fact that this is only temporary. You do got to increase funding. You do have to have more policing. But hell, that's pretty hypocritical coming from the other side who demonized the hell out of police for 4 years.
Sure, Michael,
give me
I
a
am
break
a
here.
reporter. I am not the other side. I am simply saying that there was a recent poll that said 80% of the residents of this city do not agree. And that's a fact. Now, you can try and cherry pick your, who you want to talk about, but that is just the way that the people feel here. Now, I believe in a democracy, people who live in a city should have a say in what happens there.
I
Call me
agree, but
crazy.
I agree. I'm also a strategist. I've worked in a lot of polls, and I know focus group, size,
80%.
education, ethnicity, all of that stuff matters, Lulu. It's easy to come up with a poll and say, well, this demonstrates what most people believe. You know that as well as I do.
I think at the end of the day, this is not about crime. I understand that the president and you would like to make this about crime. The bigger concern here is what this means, putting troops on the streets of American cities, troops that the governors of those cities don't want, the mayors of those cities don't want, and the people of those cities don't want. What does that say about the United States of America today? The concern, and I've worked in many of these places, is that this turns into some kind of police state where, of course, you have safety, but you lack liberty. And that is the concern I'm hearing from many, many people.
And Lulu,
right,
I don't want that either, by the way. No American wants to live in a police state. I am in agreement with...
Yeah, you don't need to hear those last 2 or 3 words he was going to say, because it was only 2 or 3 words, and it's just more false narratives, more right-wing talking points. Sure, Michael, he's not a 100% house in, but I'd put him on the 60% level of being a house in. You know what I mean by house in. But he's not as shameless. Sometimes he's more shameless. He's not as shameless as some. Like Tim Scott is just 98% shameless. And others are too. But to the point of this discussion, these are authoritarian tactics, people. We cannot have this in the United States. This is not some third world dictatorship, which is exactly what Donald Trump wants this to be. He'll say it's not third world, but he's turning us into a third world dictatorship. It's not good stuff. It's not good, people. DC didn't ask for this. That mayor's gonna get, she's done nothing but kiss Trump's butt. So she's probably gonna get voted out. Muriel Bowser, whatever her name is, mayor of DC. Chicago and the state of Illinois did not ask for this. Trump's presenting false narratives to do this. He's trying to distract, of course, from all his epic failings. The economy, all his horrible decisions, tariffs, and of course those Epstein files. He really wants to distract from that. So when he does this, and he gets the simple-minded morons on his side that'll vote for him and support him no matter what, that's why he throws these dog whistles out, putting troops in cities, especially in Democrat states, ran by Democrats, even though every city is actually a Democrat city. Like I said before, that's the way cities work. Smarter people live in cities. It doesn't matter if it's Mississippi or California. I think the city of Jackson, Mississippi is ran by Democrat. Most metropolitan areas are overwhelmingly Democrats. That's the kind of way, smarter people. I'm not trying to call rural people dumb because I have got some rural relatives. But the truth facts are, normally people who are a little bit more educated do live in metropolitan areas. People don't fall for this stuff. Do not fall for this. This is not the way first world countries look or work. They're not troops running all over London for no reason. They're not troops running all over Paris for no reason. Think about this. They're not troops running all over Montreal for no reason. Toronto for no reason. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. That's all I got this episode. Thanks for watching.